Welcome to the 387th Imagine program, Imagine Buffalo program, and another great virtual Imagine lecture hosted by our wonderful downtown Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. Thank you so much for joining us today. This program is created by the Center for the Study of Art and Architecture, History and Nature, and ImagineLifelongLearning.com. We call the acronym for the center CESAN. We're going to start with our speaker shortly, but first, a little housekeeping. Everyone watching will be muted during our speaker's presentation, which will last about 15 to 20 minutes. We'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. If you have a question, please type it into the chat box and we will get to as many as we can. This program is being recorded. You'll be able to watch it again later on the library's Facebook and the library's YouTube channel pages, which has all our previous programs going back to September 22nd. As a reminder, we'll be here on Zoom every Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. with a great lineup of local speakers. Each week, please use the same link as you used today. Now, today is the third Tuesday of the month, emphasizing history, appreciating our past, so as a community, we can better imagine our future. Our featured speaker is architect and author, Shane Stephenson. Shane currently serves as Director of Museum Collections at the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park. He has an MLIS degree in archival science and specializes in creation of finding aids, data creation, collaboration, and nonprofits. He has also previously worked with the Buffalo History Museum and Forest Lawn Cemetery. So now let's welcome our featured speaker today, Shane Stephenson, who is going to talk about the Sullivan brothers, the family, and ship. Shane?
Hi, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. So yeah, this is the first time I'm conducting a presentation like this. So I assume it will all go smoothly and look forward to your participation. And I'd like to thank Dennis and Melissa and all of the Erie County Public Library down there, all the workers at the Central Library, and thank you for hosting me. Yeah, so what I'm gonna do is I have a PowerPoint, so I will share the screen. So hopefully everyone will be able to see that. And again, this is kind of like the first time doing this. So let's hope it all goes well. Let's see, share screen. Okay, is that working? Let's see. All right. So yes, today we're talking about the Sullivan family and the USS the Sullivans, the ship, right, that we have docked down at the Naval Park, which is currently without power. So I was going to be giving this presentation from work in my office on the USS Little Rock, but without power, can't do very much. I'd be in the dark. So the Sullivan family is what we like to say is the story of sacrifice. And moving forward into the future, the Buffalo Naval Park will continue to tell the story of family sacrifice in relation to armed services. Right? No family in American history has sacrificed as much as the Sullivans have. But even descendant today, Kelly Sullivan, who's the granddaughter of one of the five brothers, says that it really isn't just about her family alone, it's about every family, whether you're a Gold Star mother or a Blue Star mother or a Gold Star family or Blue Star family, you always sacrifice something, right? So Kelly Sullivan is very clear in the sense that yes, her family has lost more than any other American family to conflict, but everyone sacrifices something. All right, so I'm going to start today. We're going to start today with a little slideshow of the commissioning itself, because that's a good place to start. There had been a lot of, by the time of the USS the Sullivans commissioning, the 5 brothers were presumed dead. The mother and the father and the sister, Genevieve, had been notified. And so it's a good dividing point between the prior and the post. All right, so I'm going to start with some slideshows of that to show the sacrifice and maybe what Alida Sullivan, the 5 boys' mother, was going through. All right, so hopefully on your screens you can see these are stills from newsreel film from the 4th of April, 1943, with the ship being commissioned. Hopefully everyone can see this. All right, so if we just focus on the timestamp there that says 44, right above that is Alida herself. In this image, she is smashing the champagne bottle, giving birth to USS the Sullivans, and sliding down the gang into the water for the first time. So again, if you're focusing on that 44 and the timestamp, you can see the back of her head and the hat that she's wearing. And also 5 seconds later, you'll see that the gentleman right to Alida's left is a rear admiral, and he comes over and congratulates Alida Sullivan for the christening. All right, a few seconds after that, about 3 seconds after the prior still, we now see Alida, again, right above the 44, with her head down. You can see actually a captain comes over and he's bending over her, and he's above the 8 in the timestamp, and he's looking at her face, and that's where she begins to break down. All right, so she's talking to a rear admiral on her left and a captain on her right, and she can't even watch the ship go down the gang. And now she's fully in the arms of the rear admiral, burying her head in his chest with her arm, and above the G there in the timestamp, you could see her arm around his back. And Kelly Sullivan, again, the granddaughter of one of the 5 brothers, has always told the story of how her grandmother just really, or her great grandmother just really collapsed after the christening. And so, and also in the far right of the screen, what I believe is Tom Sullivan, Alida's husband. He is just walking into the screen there. You'll see a suit and a white shirt and his head, his uncapped head. All right, so that shows some of the anguish that Alida and Tom were feeling, and it's well represented in this newsreel film. So how did we get to that point on the 4th of April in 1943? Well, the 5 brothers from Waterloo, Iowa, had a friend that served in the Navy and was killed in Pearl Harbor. And so they decided to enlist. And if you can see right at this is a Navy recruitment photograph of them in Waterloo. And if you can see the last 2, that would be George and Joseph. All right, they were, or I'm sorry, George and Francis. They were already in the Navy and were honorably discharged earlier in 1941. And the way you can tell is they're the 2 that are tattooed. So you can see their left arms, and they have tattoos on their left arms, probably from the Navy as well, and their time in service. So the 5 brothers requested to serve together on the same ship. The Navy did have, and all armed forces had a policy in place already that family members should be broken up, but it was a policy that was pretty lax. Certainly, this photograph was distributed throughout the country, and so there was already a groundswell of support for the 5 Sullivans serving together. So all five were attached to the USS Juneau, which was a light cruiser. You can see the hull number CL-52. Uh, this photograph from her commissioning on Valentine's Day in 1942 shows probably roughly about half the crew. Captain Lyman Swenson was the commanding officer. You had the five Sullivan brothers serving aboard, and you had multiple brothers serving aboard that would number 2 to 3 brothers, but you also had 4 Rogers brothers from Rhode Island that served aboard. And also we had 2 Buffalonians that served aboard, Edmund Mazgawa and Jerry Riley. One was from Lackawanna and one was from South Buffalo, and they were both aboard the USS Juneau. In total, there were about 690 crew and officers on board. So again, roughly this photograph would show probably about half the crew. What I really like about this photograph is you can actually see in the reflection on the deck, you can see the cameraman actually raising his arm and getting ready to snap the photo, or is in the process of snapping the photo, which I really enjoy looking at. So the USS Juneau was an Atlanta-class light cruiser. The rough weight, the distribution was anywhere from 6,000 to 8,000 tons, and she was pretty small. The Navy developed these cruisers to be fast and mobile and to be much less light. So you can almost think of them as destroyers, super destroyers, as opposed to light cruisers. All right, in our collections, happy to say that we have 2 letters from Captain Swenson to his 2 children. And even more fascinating is that one of the letters is on USS Juneau letterhead, which, given the length of the ship in service, about 9 months, there probably are not that many letters with the letterhead USS Juneau on them. So these are an example. The one on the left, handwritten, is to his son. And it's, as with many letters, it's just kind of rote. He's talking, just kind of everyday stuff about giving a talk at the Lions Club in New York City, and he included some photographs. The left, the image on the right that's typewritten was to his daughter, and he talks about how he was just given a commission of the USS Juneau, and as you can see, I wrote, he was very happy to get command of a cruiser, especially a new and modern and fast one. So those are 2 letters that we have in our collection that we do display during our season. A little bit about the battle. I know we're kind of short on time, but so basically what we had was, very early on in the war, there were all these new technologies that were developed, radar, sonar, but commanding officers, executive officers didn't really know how to take advantage of those. So the early battles, the early naval battles, were just kind of slugfests. So they didn't really take advantage of the radar and sonar capabilities. And that's really evident in this first naval battle of Guadalcanal. Japan, we had taken over Guadalcanal, and Japan, this was their first thrust into trying to recapture the island. So they brought capital ships along with transports to actually land on the island and overtake our Marines in Henderson Field. So throughout the battle, the USS Juneau was torpedoed once, and during her steaming away with the USS San Francisco and the UNS and another few vessels, she was torpedoed again in relatively in the same area. So that was a catastrophic explosion. Eyewitnesses on other ships talk about the turrets exploding over their ships and into the water. And the USS Atlanta, which was the lead ship in this class, was also sunk during this battle. And it prompted the Navy to discontinue this class in heavy engagements and to be more of an anti-aircraft cruiser protecting the fleet for the rest of the war. Yeah, so, two catastrophic torpedo hits. Communication was knocked out, and so therefore none of the vessels had any warning that torpedoes were in the water. She sank in roughly 15 to 20 seconds, and the only survivors were on the main deck and above, as they were blown off the decks when the explosion happened. Ultimately, only 10 of the 690 sailors who served on board survived, and that was even after a 7 or 8 day ordeal in the water. There was an eyewitness that claimed that George Sullivan, the oldest of the 5 brothers, did survive. He was on the main deck when the second torpedo hit, and he was blown off into the water. He proceeded to look for his brothers, and in a moment of despondency, he also allowed himself to sink or be killed by sharks. So in his delirium, he just let himself drift away from the life raft because he knew all of his 4 brothers had also been killed. Right? Oddly enough, and sometimes how life happens, on St. Patrick's Day in 2018, the Juno was located by Paul Allen's research vessel. And so here's one of our 5-inch, one of the 5-inch 38 guns that were used in anti-aircraft combat. All right, so very quickly, there was rumors that spread around Waterloo from other people that were engaged in the battle that the Juno was sunk. The family started catching wind of this, and it lined up with when the letters stopped coming home from the 5 brothers. She reached out to the Navy. President Roosevelt responded directly to them, saying that they're still missing in action, and that the tragedy and the mantle of freedom falls to their shoulders. And so then we get to April of 43 when she christened the ship. And it's the only ship in the US Navy that is named after more than one person. So it is USS the Sullivans. All right, after the commissioning, Alita began a tour, all right, doing a goodwill tour. All told, she visited 65 cities and spoke to about 1 million workers at 200 plants around the country. She also participated in USO events. And as you can see in the top picture, she's working in a kitchen. All right, so she really felt that this was a way of giving back, promoting the war effort, and she was happy to do it, and it kept her mind off of the tragedy of losing her 5 sons. All right, so USS the Sullivans. She launched in 43, commissioned. You'll see that she was decommissioned for a little bit. I know we're kind of getting up to time here, so I'll kind of steam along here, so to speak, at full horsepower. She eventually arrived in Buffalo in the 4th of July in 77, and we opened her to the public in 79. Okay, here's a great picture of USS the Sullivans steaming towards the USS Bunker Hill that had been hit by kamikazes. And that was one of the jobs of a destroyer, was to rescue sailors off of burning vessels. All right, so that's what she did here. She also did that with the USS Houston. So all told, oh, here's another image during World War II. The shamrock on the forward stack is pretty clear here. All right, so they're one of a few vessels that were able to actually have like paint on emblems and things like that on their ship. All right, her World War II record. I've read through the whole war diary from start to finish. she had shot down or assisted in shooting down about 12 and a half Japanese planes. She bombed about 8 planes that were on tarmacs and runways. She rescued 12 American pilots that had to ditch in the water. She rescued 287 sailors, and she did bury 3 of the sailors at sea. And she also assisted with the sinking of Chokai, which was a Japanese Imperial Navy heavy cruiser, and a landing ship, an LST, right, which landed on beachheads, and then their bow opened up, and rolling stock came off. All right, her post-World War II record is she spent 5 months. You'll see the dates there, participating in the Korean War and the Korean conflict, targeting bridges and rail yards. After that, she joined NATO forces in patrolling the Arctic Circle. She was part of the fleet tasked with retrieving Alan Shepard, the astronaut, in 1961. Participated with the blockade of the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, and was part of the fleet tasked to searching for the USS Thresher, one of the early, if not the earliest, nuclear submarine that sank with all hands lost in 1963. All right, kind of continuing on here. Again, arrived in 77, became a National Historic Landmark in 1986. She's currently one of 3 Fletcher-class destroyers remaining in America. And there were a total of 175 Fletcher-class destroyers built, and 3 are remaining in America here. And she is toured by about 60,000 visitors every year except for this year, but from all 50 states and over 100 countries. And here in this photo is the Grand Marshal for the St. Patrick's Day Parade. So this is in 1978, and they met on the Sullivans before the parade started. All right, we're also happy to report that we recently bid on and won 1945 USS the Sullivans flag that flew aboard during World War II. This was a pretty rare artifact, and as I say, we do have some ironclad provenance that flag, that we can follow the history of that flag. This coming year, we plan on having a hoisting ceremony, and then I plan on working to conserve, preserve, and display the flag. So there's a photo of the flag that we received earlier this year. All right, so what does the future hold? Well, the future for the Sullivans, as of right now, is pretty tenuous. Because she was built fast, without a lot of armor, most of the hull line underneath the waterline is less than ½ an inch thick. And more than likely, it is between 2/10 and 3/10 of an inch thick. So we're beginning an endowment to help preserve the ship, and we've done studies, and we've located a product that could be, for lack of a better phrase, smeared onto the hull under the waterline without dry docking, and but that's at a serious cost to us. Also, we have an all hands on deck campaign, and really, as with many culturals, our budget or our revenue that we brought in is only about 14% of what we normally would see in an average year. So there's some struggles that we have along with other culturals, and these are areas that you can support us with. So you can visit our website at buffalonavalpark.org/donate, and that will get you right to our donation page, and you can help us preserve these artifacts that are like floating, they're like floating historic homes, right? So, and I believe that is my PowerPoint. So let's see if we can get out of here. Let's see. Stop share. All right, did that work? I've done this before, but so that's kind of the whirlwind tour. I know we're coming up against the end, but if there are questions, please
Melissa, do we have any questions from our audience?
Dennis, yes, we have a few questions. The first question is from Betty. She asks, did I see a woman in the front line of the Juno crew?
No, probably not. I would have to go back and really get out the, I'd have to really get out the magnifying glass for that. But no, that should have just been the executive officers and of roughly about half the crew. I don't think they would have brought the woman who was the wife of the mayor of Juneau, Alaska, who commissioned that vessel. But she would not have been there for or she launched the vessel, but she wouldn't have been there for the commissioning.
Another question, is the museum/ship open year round? And what is the recommended age for children to tour it?
All right. We are actually not open year round. We usually open roughly March 30th, April 1st, and we go until roughly November 30th, with the weekends only getting into October and November. But with COVID and how this year has been, we are currently closed. The recommended age, we see everyone from babies and toddlers and strollers up until, teenagers and through adults. So we don't have a recommended age, but these ships are pretty, there's a lot of tight quarters here. So certainly having kids, holding their hands and things like that and stepping over, some of our, what we call our shin kickers, which is where the hatches are. And our ladders can be pretty steep. So we do see, ages 2 months or 1 month to 99, so to speak. But so it is just kind of, we do have some photographs on our website that you can see about with some of the stairwells and some of the passageways. But really, it is open to everybody.
And we have someone who says they are a 12-year-old in the chat asking, did the USS the Sullivans ever take serious damage?
No, she never took serious damage. Thanks for your question. But she never really took serious damage. It's interesting that most of the damage that she received was during peacetime. So during trainings and things like that, she did collide with a couple other ships of the US Navy. There is one incident in the war record where she shot down a Japanese plane and the debris, obviously the forward momentum carried it over the ship, and 2 or 3 crew did get pretty injured by the falling debris. But no, she was never, she was bombed, but thankfully the bombs from the planes didn't actually hit. And she was never kamikazed or, never was in a situation where a kamikaze got close to her.
And here's a comment, but it's from Michael. You should invite the DDG-68, the Sullivans, out of Mayport to visit. Yes,
we do have we are developing a very nice relationship with them. And the catalyst for that is Kelly Sullivan. So she launched and commissioned the DDG-68. So that's a wonderful continuation of the story. We have worked closely over the years with our association, but now the guys unfortunately are dying away and passing away. So we are looking to strengthen that bond with the DDG-68 crew.
It's 1 o'clock.
Sorry, that was me. And we will continue to do that moving forward. So thanks for that suggestion.
And last question, this one actually comes from me because I'm curious. How did the Sullivans, the boat, get to be in Buffalo as opposed to anywhere else in the country?
Interesting, thank you. So I'll try to give the abridged version. So back in 1975, some of our city leaders went down to North Carolina, and they saw that in Wilmington, North Carolina, there was the USS North Carolina, the battleship. They came back up here. By that time, our waterfront had been cleared of any of the Central Wharf and all of those historical buildings and rail yards. And it was just kind of, like a big gravel pit, so to speak, or not pit, but a big gravel area. So we worked with the Navy. Why the USS the Sullivans was chosen, maybe because we have a large Irish population here and people would think that there's some nice connection. But we did petition the Navy, and we got the USS the Sullivans and USS Little Rock at the same time. And logistically came up from Philadelphia. They were both in Philadelphia, came up from Philadelphia into the St. Lawrence Seaway, into Lake Ontario, down the Welland Canal, into Lake Erie, and then here to Buffalo.
Well,
Those are all the questions that we had.
Melissa,
Thank you so
thank you.
much.
Thank you very much. The time has caught up with us. Shane, you have contributed a great deal to archiving an important part of our history and obviously American history. This is the work, I would argue, of many volunteers that brought the ship back, have maintained it when it was tough going in the 70s and 80s and 90s and the past couple of decades, but it's turned into one of America's great naval parks, the largest, I believe, inland, taking away the two coasts in America. So thank you, Shane,
Thank you very much, Dennis.
for doing that. Now, next week, we have Kathy Leacock, and she's the Director of Collections over at the Museum of Science. And it will be a presentation because the exhibit on mummies, Egyptian mummies, has been extended until January. So our good fortune will be updated, and we'll hear from her about that. Folks, this is a wonderful new medium that we're delighted that you could join us. We hope you'll mention it to others. Again, check out past presentations on the library's YouTube site, and we'll invite you to be well and have a good afternoon. This is Dennis Galucki. Good day.
Thank you.